It stood on long backwards legs, like a goat's, but without the fur. The joints bent the wrong way, unnatural and wrong. Its skin glistened oil-soaked brownish green, skeletal arms and tattered dreadlocks hanging down to its back. And its eyes glowed red in the darkness. The security guard had warned him not to cross the river. There was a witch doctor in those woods, a creature that guards the forest, but he didn't listen. Now it's standing right in front of him. This is the Midnight Registry.
In the space between midnight and dawn, when the world turns cold and the light is gone, something's watching from the tree-line edge. These are the stories they don't want you to know.
Before we get into tonight's story, I want to give credit where it is due. This encounter comes from a user who goes by Upside Down Nigel, posted online. While on a school camping trip in South Africa, he and his friend Stephen encountered something from Zulu and Xhosa mythology, a creature that shouldn't exist, but does. A Tokoloshe, a dwarf-like water sprite with backward legs, glowing red eyes, and the ability to become invisible. Summoned by witch doctors to cause harm. Nigel was warned not to cross the river, and he ignored that warning. When he came face to face with the creature that guards those woods, full credit goes to Nigel for sharing this experience. Now let's get into it. A few years ago, a group of school children went on a camping trip in South Africa. The campsite was far from civilization, deep in a lush green forest, with a river running between the grounds. On one side, perched on a small hill, was the dining area. On the other side, down near the river and forest, were the boys' dormitories. The girls' dorms were positioned close to security and the teachers. But the boys? They were isolated, close to the river, close to the forest, close to something else. One of the boys, we'll call him Nigel, was a prankster, an adventurer. He never slept, always looking for mischief, always pushing boundaries. On his first night at camp, he met one of the security guards. Late that evening, the guard entertained him with stories. And then he left Nigel with a clear warning. Do not go past the river at night, under any circumstances, and do not go during the day alone. The guard's face was serious. This wasn't a joke. There is a witch doctor in those woods, he said. He has summoned a Tokoloshe that guards the forest. Nigel had heard of Tokoloshes before. Every South African kid knew the stories. In Zulu and Xhosa mythology, a Tokoloshe is a dwarf-like water sprite, mischievous, evil. It can become invisible by drinking water or swallowing a stone. Witch doctors, sangomas, summon in to cause trouble. At best, they scare children. At worst, they cause illness and even death. Only a pastor with real power can banish one, but Nigel was a skeptic and a troublemaker. The warning only fueled his curiosity. The next day, Nigel and his friend Stephen were roaming the grounds, discussing the possibility of there actually being a Tokoloshe. Nigel was adamant it was nonsense, just adults trying to control kids' behavior. Stephen? He was terrified. All day they pushed closer to the boundary, testing limits, making their way towards the forest. And eventually Nigel walked across a log, stood on the other side of the river, the side they weren't supposed to be on. Chuffed with himself, he called to Stephen, who was hiding behind a tree. See? There's nothing to be afraid of. He had no idea what he'd just done. By crossing that river, he'd entered the Tokoloshe's territory, and it had noticed. That night, Nigel and Stephen were walking to dinner. It was pitch black, foggy from the moisture rising off the river. They'd stopped tempting fate, were just planning their next adventure. Then Stephen stopped, suddenly. "Did you see that?" Nigel looked confused. "What?" "There was something, like a pig or an animal, by those trees." Stephen pointed. Nigel swung his torch in that direction, and what he saw he will remember for the rest of his life. 2 glowing eyes, red, burning, staring straight at him, into his soul. Even with the glow from his torch, Nigel couldn't make out any features, just those eyes, fixed on him. Before he could turn around to speak, Stephen had taken off running, leaving Nigel alone in the field, alone with the eyes. He heard a slight rustle in the trees, and the eyes were gone, but he could still feel it, watching him. Nigel started calling the creature Mr. Red. He had no idea how right that name was, or how soon he'd see Mr. Red again. Later that evening, Stephen, completely freaked out, asked Nigel to walk with him to the toilet. Nigel hesitantly agreed. The path was cold and quiet and pitch dark, except for their torches. There was one single light positioned outside the bathroom door, but that was it. Entering the bathroom, they felt like a SWAT team on high alert. Nigel took first watch at the entrance door while Stephen took care of business, and then Nigel heard it. Knocking, scratching, coming from the door behind him. Stephen, trying to be brave, said it was probably someone trying to prank them. Nigel agreed. He swung the door open and shouted, "You think your prank scares me? You can't scare me, just try." Obviously provoking, he assumed it was a classmate. No response. He closed the door and went back inside, where Stephen was getting ready to shower. This time Nigel stood a bit further from the door. Warmer there. After a few minutes, the banging and scratching returned. Louder this time, and Nigel stormed outside, cursing like a madman. But again, nothing. No one there. Now he got boisterous, cocky even. "Come on! Next time knock this door down. Face me like a man." He turned back to Stephen, who had jumped out of the shower in fright, asking what happened. "Just people playing tricks," Nigel said. "Finish up so we can get back." That's when it came. The big one. Something ran at the door, crashed into it with incredible force, scratching and banging so violent it ripped the top hinge clean off. The door hung at an angle, barely holding on. Nigel's fight or flight kicked in. He chose fight. He bolted towards the door, furious, swung it open and ran outside. He turned left, then right, and as he rounded the last corner, he came face to face with it. The Tokoloshe, the beast of the bathroom. It had brownish-green skin, slick, oil-soaked, glistening in the dim light. Long, tattered hair with bald spots, what looked like dreadlocks draped down its back. Glowing red eyes, the same eyes Nigel had seen in the field, lit up its bony torso and skeletal arms. And its legs, long, backward, like a goat's legs without the fur. The joints bent the wrong way, unnatural, and for a brief moment they stared at each other. Then it turned and took off running. It moved slowly, but its steps were long and springy. Its pace was so intense that Nigel swears even Usain Bolt couldn't have caught it. And just like that, it disappeared into the darkness. Stephen, once again, had already run away, leaving Nigel alone with everything Stephen had left behind in his panic. So what exactly is a Tokoloshe? In Zulu and Xhosa mythology, it's a dwarf-like water sprite, a spirit creature. They're mischievous, some even malevolent, and they can become invisible by drinking water or swallowing a stone. Tokoloshes don't just appear on their own, they have to be summoned. A sangoma, a traditional witch doctor, calls upon them, usually at the request of someone who wants to cause harm to another person. At their least harmful, Tokoloshes are used to scare children into behaving, but their power extends far beyond that. They can cause illness, mental torment, insomnia, bad luck, and in the worst cases, death. The only way to banish a Tokoloshe is through a pastor, particularly of an apostolic faith, who has the spiritual power and expertise to drive it away. But you can't banish what you don't believe in, and Nigel hadn't believed, until he saw it with his own eyes. In South Africa, many people still take the Tokoloshe seriously. Some raise their beds on bricks. The belief is that Tokoloshes are too short to climb up and will give up. Others keep blessed water, protective herbs, or religious symbols in their homes. Because the stories aren't just folklore. People see them, encounter them, live in fear of them. And that creature Nigel saw that night matched every traditional description. Dwarf-like, water sprite living near the river, backwards legs, glowing eyes, summoned by a witch doctor to guard the forest. The guard had warned him not to cross the river, and Nigel had crossed it anyway. Looking back, Nigel understands what happened. The guard told him not to cross the river. That was the boundary, the line you don't cross. But Nigel, being young and cocky, walked right across that log and stood on the other side. He loudly proclaimed there was nothing to be afraid of. He challenged the forest, taunted it. And the Tokoloshe heard. That night it came for him, showed itself in the field, and let him see those glowing red eyes, a warning. But Nigel didn't listen. When he went to the bathroom, he taunted it again. It attacked the door with such force it ripped the hinge off. It showed him exactly what it was capable of. And when Nigel ran outside to confront it, the Tokoloshe let him see its full form. Then it left. The message was clear. I could have hurt you. I could have killed you. But I'm letting you go. This time. Don't cross the river again. The next morning, Nigel saw the security guard again. He didn't tell him what happened. He didn't need to. The guard looked at him, just looked, and Nigel knew that the guard knew. He'd seen that look before, on other boys who'd ignored his warning. The guard didn't say, "I told you so." His eyes said everything. You crossed the river, you saw it, and now you believe. Nigel believes that the guard had his own encounters, his own stories, and that's why he knew. That's why he warned them. Because the witch doctor in those woods is real, and the Tokoloshe he summoned still guards that forest, waiting for the next person who doesn't believe. The next person who crosses the river. The rest of the camp trip passed without incident. No more sightings, no more attacks, just normal school camp activities. But Nigel couldn't forget. The image of that creature was burned into his mind. The way it moved, slow but covering ground impossibly fast with those legs. Stephen wouldn't talk about it. Every time Nigel brought it up, Stephen would change the subject or walk away. Too traumatized, too scared. But Nigel knows what he saw. And he knows why it happened. He was warned, and he ignored the warning. And it showed him exactly what happens when you disrespect something you don't understand. He never crossed that river again, and he never will. Tokoloshe encounters aren't rare in South Africa. People report them regularly, across the country, in rural areas and even in cities. Security guards, travelers, children, adults. They see the glowing eyes, hear the scratching, feel the presence. Some report being attacked in their sleep, a phenomenon called Tokoloshe paralysis. Similar to sleep paralysis, but with the added terror of seeing the little creature sitting on your chest. Others report household items moving, strange noises, bad luck that follows them. Traditional healers and pastors are regularly called to homes to banish them. And it works. The rituals, the prayers, the blessed water, they drive the creatures away. But only if you believe. Only if you respect them. Nigel didn't believe. He's lucky all he got was a scare. Others haven't been so fortunate. Somewhere in South Africa, in a lush green forest with a river running through it, there is a campground. During the day, it's beautiful. Kids play, swim, have adventures. But at night, something changes. The forest grows darker. The river sounds different. And if you're quiet, you can hear movement in the trees. The security guards know. They warn every new group that arrives. Most listen, but there's always one. Always someone who thinks they know better, who thinks it's just a story to scare children. And when that person crosses the river, when they taunt the darkness, and when they dare the forest to show them something, the Tokoloshe answers, with glowing red eyes, backwards legs, and oil-soaked skin. Nigel will never forget what he saw that night. The creature that ripped the door off its hinges, the thing that ran at him on backward legs. Those glowing red eyes had burned into his soul. He was a skeptic, a prankster. Someone who didn't believe in things that go bump in the night. Now he knows better. Tokoloshes are real. Witch doctors summon them for a reason, and when you're warned not to cross a boundary, you listen. Because some warnings aren't meant to control you, they're meant to protect you. From things that exist whether you believe in them or not. If you ever find yourself in South Africa, at a campground near a forest with a river running through it, listen to the security guard. Don't test it. Don't taunt it. Don't challenge the darkness. Because something might answer, and you might not like what you see. 3 warnings ignored. 3 escalations, 3 chances given. Nigel was told not to cross the river. He crossed it anyway. The Tokoloshe showed him the eyes in the darkness. Warning 1. Nigel went to the bathroom and taunted it again. Tokoloshe ripped the door off its hinges. Warning 2. Nigel ran outside to confront it. The Tokoloshe showed him its full form. Backward legs, oil-soaked skin and skeletal frame. Then left. Warning 3. Final warning. What strikes me most is the restraint. It could have killed him. Easily. But it chose mercy. This wasn't a mindless monster, this was a guardian enforcing boundaries. Summoned to protect, doing its job. Respect the boundaries, heed the warnings. The Tokoloshe only attacks when you force its hand. Sleep well.
Welcome to the Midnight Registry, where the darkness keeps its secrets. Welcome to the Midnight Registry.